Spoiler warning. The following audio recording contains spoilers for Pokémon Sun and Pokémon Moon. If you have not played through Pokémon Sun or Moon, or if you plan to or care about spoilers in any way, I would skip this recording for now and come back when you're finished. If you don't care about spoilers or you don't plan on playing, good evening. My name is Tom Pokenutter, and I'm going to be discussing Team Skull. Now, the one thing that caught my attention about Team Skull is the fact that people frickin' love these guys. And you know, they don't usually have that reaction to the evil teams. It's, okay, so these are the enemies. Never before had I seen, oh my god, they're so lovably dorky. And yeah, I kind of get it. They're bombastic. They're hamtastic. They're everything a cartoony villain should be. And of course, the moment the Aether Foundation was revealed, everybody correctly called that they would wind up being the villains. Which, I guess by the time the games came out, the Pokemon Company didn't care about that being a spoiler, as they literally open with a scene that confirms it. But something did kind of strike me when they were previewing Team Skull. It's the fact that these guys did have personality. Team Flare, you could argue, had a slight personality. They believed that only the beautiful should survive. And that was every grunt and the 4 admins. Zerosic kind of had this let's experiment on everybody, mad scientist kind of vibe to him. And Lysander's deal was a little bit more along the lines of the givers versus the takers, but by and large, the team was more or less entirely about beauty, and that was it. There was nothing overly complex about them. They were just that. Kind of boring, in retrospect. But, before that, we had Team Plasma, who were kind of written as this deconstruction of PETA, I think. I don't think the parallels are quite there. I think that they've got less in common with PETA and more in common with the animal rights activists who release a saltwater fish, out into freshwater because water is water, and they don't even know that this could be fatal. PETA does what it wants and doesn't care. Team Plasma, could be argued, would care, but they don't know what kind of negative side effects there could be to their ideology. But, we've gone far back enough. You get this idea that villain teams in the past have had varying layers of complexity. And allow me to start this off, start off at the 3-minute 30 mark, by saying that Team Skull are more complex than any evil team before them. Period. Hands down. Now, oh, but Tom, they're just Saturday morning cartoon villains, aren't they? Well, yes and no. Because, see, the big thing about Team Skull that makes them interesting is that they are an answer to a question that everybody should have been asking, and the games themselves never did. Because, see, it's an important question, and one that in 20 years of the franchise had not been touched. And the question is this: why do people keep joining these evil teams? They never go anywhere. Clearly it's not a solid career investment, and you get arrested at the end. Do we seriously have enough people that are sitting back and going, yes, my calling is to drain the oceans? And how many people, honestly, do you think have that as their calling? Team Skull is made up of 2 groups of people. And we are told this through the dialogue. There is evidence. Team Skull is made up, firstly, of people from broken homes, and secondly, for people who could not complete the island challenge. Now, the first one, understandable. Team Skull is all about the family dynamic, and for a lot of them, maybe this is the closest thing to a real family they have ever had in their lives. Now, obviously, not every broken home is going to put out a Team Skull member, but it's at least possible to say these guys have enough of a presence that it's worth mentioning. The other group, though, I would honestly believe are bigger. People who couldn't complete the island challenge. Now, on your first run through the game, you're probably thinking, okay, so this is like, I couldn't make the basketball team, so my evil plan is to shrink all the basketball players so they can't play either. And, well, that would be, I think, believable, and certainly about the complexity level you usually expect from Pokemon. They approached the Pokemon journey a little bit different this time with the Island Challenge. And let me put it to you this way. The Island Challenge is a rite of passage you are expected to make at a certain age. It involves traveling to potentially unfamiliar places, growing as a person, learning new things, and making bonds that are going to last your entire life. What's more, it is expected that everyone will go through this journey, and they will make it to the end. Now, I don't know about any of you, but to me, that sounds like college. And this expectation that you will go to college is one that is drilled into you throughout public school, and certainly a lot of people's parents probably do a little bit of drilling too, and in the end, the employers do as well, because you're kind of expected to have a degree to get anywhere. So, these people who couldn't complete the Island Challenge, they're not, jaded idiots out with a grudge. It's college dropouts. Now think about how college dropouts are portrayed in media. They're lazy slackers who live with their parents because they literally have nowhere else to go, usually unemployed, can't get a date. Occasionally they're shown as a source of weird wisdom, but they're never... The only time they're written as people is when their story arc ends with them going back to college. So these people tried their damnedest at what was explained to them to be the most important thing they will ever do, and they couldn't do it. They tried. It's not one of those things where, oh, well, this is too hard, let's leave. This, to me, sounds like months of agonizing over your inability to do this thing that everyone has told you you should be able to do, or there's something wrong with you. So, how do they wind up in Team Skull from that? Well, it's very simple. I am a college dropout. My family was very supportive. They helped me, get back on my feet. I have 2 jobs now. They are not college educated jobs, but they pay the bills. But what if these people in Team Skull didn't have that? What if everybody was just treating them like the archetypal college dropout? Like they were just some lazy asshole mooching off their parents. And then, a couple years in, they're out in the middle of town, they hear about this place where nobody judges you, and they go and visit. They wind up in Po Town. And the place looks like a dump, but then they talk to the people there, and no one is judging them. They're treating them like actual human beings. And for once in their lives, since completing that Island Challenge, they feel like a person again. Is it any wonder Team Skull picks up members? Hell, that may be even how the other teams pick up members. Do you honestly think, going back to our Team Aqua and Team Magma, do you honestly think it's staffed entirely out of people who think we ought to catastrophically destroy or enhance the water level of the ocean? No. chances are, for some of these people, it's a job. It's a place where they feel accepted. Now, does this justify their criminal actions? No. But I honestly think that it's entirely possible Team Skull did not begin as a criminal organization. I think it became one over time as this idea of don't mess with the family became more and more prevalent. It certainly strikes me as believable. I mean, Plumeria, the only named non-leader of Team Skull, seems to have this very eye for an eye approach. I mean, yes, Team Skull as a whole has the don't mess with my friends aspect, but Plumeria takes it a step further, because she kinda hunts you down. And, you know, Team Skull, you notice them traveling in pairs everywhere, just in case one of them is bullied, so they have somebody to stick up for them. So, say for instance, a couple of Team Skull grunts got their Pokemon stolen by less than scrupulous people. Plumeria comes back, hands them their Pokemon as well as a couple others. This won't be an issue anymore. I've taken care of it. And hell, it's probably not only Plumeria who had that reaction. The only reason Plumeria is the one who confronts you is because she happens to be the one in power at the time. I bet there are loads of other Team Skull members who are like that. But this whole culture of reliance on one another is something that, honestly, they need. I mean, nobody on Alola takes them seriously. They probably didn't take them very seriously before they joined Team Skull. But probably the best example of this is when those two Team Skull grunts are giving you trouble on the dock, and Ilima just casually ignores them. It's like, holy shit, that's cold. It's like, until you stop and think about it, it's funny as hell. But damn! The trial captains are assholes! Now, I want to give the Pokemon Company a little bit of extra credit here, because never once do Team Skull pretend they want to take over the world. Everything falls into two categories: revenge, or steal Pokemon, sell them off, survive. When you go to Po Town, the entire place is in ruins. Graffiti everywhere. And the part that made me chuckle the most was going into the Pokemon Center, and all the power's out. And a couple of Team Skull grunts behind the corner rap at you about how the power's out, but with a little bit of extra cash, they can get it running again long enough to heal your Pokemon. And it's this tiny little minuscule amount. Nothing in the game costs 10 Pokédollars. Nothing. The cheapest item in the game costs 150. These people need 10, and they ask for 10 to work the Pokemon Center. These people are destitute, and the entire town has suffered due to financial hardship. Probably not helped by the fact that, you know, Team Skull has kind of been trained to expect to think that non-Team Skull members who come in are there to mock them. When you talk to the Team Skull grunts outside the entrance to Po Town, they don't know who you are. Instead, they notice you've got the trial emblem and a Z-ring, and they think you're there to make fun of them. That's why they battle you. It's not one of those, oh shit, he's here to disrupt the master plan. It's like, you got a problem, pal? That is the mindset we are dealing with. These people have been driven to the very end of their rope, so the stealing has become necessary. And meanwhile, this is not helped by the fact that Alola as a whole doesn't care about them. They think they're just a bunch of lazy assholes who would rather steal everything that isn't nailed down than actually get a decent working job. But oh wait, they failed the island challenge. That means they're second-class citizens. I'm thinking, honestly, probably the best thing for Team Skull after the events of this game would be to try and go legit. And I think it's possible. Hell, part of me is even convinced that the reason that your boy Guzma joined the Aether Foundation in the first place was to try and make things better for his grunts. I mean, the Aether Foundation is established in-game to be headquartered in Alola, but it is a worldwide organization. So, the president of this multinational company approaches you about doing a little bit of work on the side, and it happens to be work that you yourself and your team are good at, and they can pay you a lot of money. Do you think Guzma was thinking, yeah, let's destroy Alola, hell yeah? No, I don't think so. See, when Guzma talks to Kukui when he first shows up, and has that gloriously hamtastic introduction, "Destruction in human form, your boy Guzma!" And that's the voice they're going to give him in the anime, I guarantee it. But he talks to Kukui, and he refers to them both as misfits who could never become trial captains. And I kind of have this image in my head of that's all Guzma ever wanted to be. But considering that he couldn't, this father to his men idea is literally the only thing he has left. And what better way to be a father for your men than make sure that none of them are ever going to need anything else in their entire lives. They're going to be set for life. I think that's why he cooperates with Luzamine. And also why it is, the moment he arrives in Ultra Space, he's, "Fuck this! This lady's crazy!" And thank God they stuck with this particular approach to them. They are malicious, 100%. But they're not the same kind of malicious that Team Flare were, or that Getsis was, or that Lusamine, when possessed by Nihilego, is. They are basically the evil version of Aladdin. They steal because they have to. They just take a little bit too much delight in it. And this particular idea allowed them to actually work the whole thing into their narrative, and this narrative bit into the gameplay. I mean, this is something I thought was very, very cool. Guzma specializes in bug types. Now, for the first 2 generations of Pokemon, bug types were an absolute joke. I don't think anybody's going to debate that. They had no useful moves. Everything had a type advantage over them. They had some interesting advantages over Psychic and Dark, but they couldn't actively take advantage of them. And this changed sort of in Gen 3, with a couple of neat bug-type moves that popped up, but it really hit its stride in Gen 4, when Bug started to become a decent counter to Psychic and Dark, as well as just in general. It may be an easy type to counter, but it's got enough tricks up its sleeve and odd status effects that it can throw, and overall it became a lot more interesting. Gen 5 continued this trend. It didn't enhance it as much as a lot of the other types did, but Bug was still not a joke anymore. And then came Gen 6, and the Fairy type was introduced. Now, Fairy types, if you ask me, a decent idea, but one they went totally overkill on and broke the meta, which is part of the reason Salazzle exists now, by the way. It's a hard counter to Fairies. Like, the best hard counter to Fairies. But, you know, The one thing that always pissed me off about Fairy, it resisted Bug. If it had been weak to Bug, that would have been fair. If it had been neutral to Bug, that would have been unfortunate, but still not unfair. Bug went down a tier in usability after so many strides forward. It's not as much of a joke as it was in 1 and 2, but it's around Generation 3 levels of useful. Not very. So here we have this type that has been roundly rejected, and it's Guzma's type of choice. Then we get into his specific bug types. There's not a lot that can be said about Ariados. I don't recall anything real specific in its Pokedex entries, but Golisopod, his favorite Pokemon, here's where it gets interesting. Golisopod has an ability that when its health hits yellow, it switches. It runs away. It calls for help. It does the same thing the organization does. If it can't handle a threat, it goes and gets an ally. And that is a fantastic way of handling Guzma's team. Because Team Skull is written into everything about Guzma's battles. Overall, Team Skull as a whole are some of the best villains we have had come out of this franchise in a long time. And while Lusamine was fantastic, and Lysander was alright, and Getsus was fantastic, and Cyrus was fantastic, we've never had an entire evil team like this, where there is just so much to talk about, and it integrates its own style into the gameplay. Hell, what are Team Skull known for using? Pokemon that are weak, and they're just like Team Skull. Pokemon that people wouldn't look twice at. Rattatas, Zubats, Male Sandalit. The entire team is based on this theme of rejection, and rejects banding together. And not only that, it also deconstructs the evil team idea by giving us solid reasons why you would join, even if you don't necessarily agree with the methods, the rationale, the end goal. It is an incredibly smart part of these games, and it's only the tip of the iceberg. We can talk about Lusamine, about the Island Challenge. We can talk about the legendary Pokemon, and how Solgaleo and Lunala are an integral part of this plot, and it wouldn't be able to progress without them, in a way that no other legendary has done. It is no exaggeration to suggest that Sun and Moon are the best Pokemon games we have had since 2001. And I am so glad these are the 20th anniversary games, because people are going to remember them. As people are coming back to the franchise from Pokemon Go, we've given them a reason to stay. Thank you, everyone, and good night.